Happy Tuesday, historians. Today we're going to talk about what was called the Cultural Revolution in China. This period took place between 1966 and 1976 in communist China. We're going to focus on the leader of this period of communist China named Mao Zedong. He was the ruler of communist China from 1949 to his death in 1976. Early on in his leadership, Mao attempted to do what Stalin did with Soviet Union and try to move the Chinese economy to a more modern era. He did this with two 5-year plans that he called the Great Leap Forward. And the effort was to try to modernize the Chinese economy. However, by 1960, the Great Leap Forward was seen as a massive failure. The government was setting unrealistic expectations. Millions of Chinese citizens were dying of starvation, and many in the Chinese Communist Party and in the country blamed Mao for the failure of the Great Leap Forward. As a communist dictator, he couldn't have this happening. He couldn't have people potentially threaten his power. So he decided to implement a new type of revolution called the Cultural Revolution in 1966. He wanted to, what he said, reinvigorate the population with revolutionary spirit of past civil war. But what he actually was trying to do was reassert his own power within the country. He called for all Chinese to ignore what was called the four olds: old customs, old culture, old habits, and old ideas. The group put in charge of ignoring and destroying these four olds was called the Red Garb. These were extremist groups made up of students ages 12 to 19 who Mao urged to rebel against teachers and even parents and family that represented the old four, the four olds. They came together to destroy ancient Chinese buildings and churches. They captured and tortured artists, teachers, doctors, and anyone related to or representing what Mao decided was the four olds. This group was expected and carried this Mao's Little Red Book. It was a collection of Mao's thoughts on various topics and included excerpts from speeches and writings of Mao. It was printed in small versions so that people could keep them in their pockets, as all Red Guard members were expected to do. And they also had what were called struggle meetings. This was a form of public humiliation used during the Cultural Revolution to try to humiliate and to cleanse people that were participants or victims of their old way of thinking. You can see some images to the right in this slideshow. Pretty disturbing stuff. By 1969, the Red Guard had become too powerful, and Mao ordered them to be captured and imprisoned. They started themselves to become a threat to his power and really stopped listening to his instructions and kind of going rogue and doing their own thing. By 1976, Mao called for the end of the Cultural Revolution. Which left the country in shambles, and countless civilians suffered or were killed during the Cultural Revolution. On top of this, there is an entire generation of Chinese students who, because they were urged to rebel against school and their parents, they were not expected to go to school, who missed out on literacy, reading, and everything associated that we often take for granted in our country of being educated. So there is an entire generation that kind of missed out on being educated in communist China during this Cultural Revolution. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. For more info, definitely check out those bonus materials. There's some interviews with those people that had survived the Cultural Revolution and lived through it. So definitely check out those interviews if you want to know more. If you have any questions, let me know.